Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we're going to talk about a few different things. First of all, those climate extremists are at it again. They just can't help themselves. Unfortunately, they're not doing so well. We're going to laugh along with you at seeing the kind of nonsense that they're getting up to. Also, as if we had to tell you again, we've been had when it comes to like straws and when it comes to masks. There's been a whole bunch of crap that's been coming down the pipeline. We got to point it out to you guys. There's also been some amazing protests that have been happening, both by a kid wearing a Gadsden flag on his backpack and some fights over mask mandates. I'm like, hey, you know what? It's always good to see that they're not getting away with it this time. People are willing to stand up, which is awesome. Also, Biden is more hot water. Christian Freeland is in even more hot water, and Canada may actually be heading in the right direction when it comes to parental rights. We're going to cover all that and so much more today on this week's episode, or this Tuesday's episode, of the Shrewd Deuce podcast.
We see you, Conqueror. You will not. You will not watch Ahsoka. You will watch us.
Oh, even Ahsoka. Like, who would actually watch Ahsoka?
I have started watching. It is okay. This is a bit of a nerd moment. Yes. Yes.
No. Like,
Ahsoka
if you want to
is
watch
a love
Ahsoka
letter to Rebels. That's
if you want to watch, Ahsoka's a giant middle finger to Rebels.
No, it's
That's
not.
what that is.
Ahsoka is a love letter to Rebels because it references so much of what happened in Rebels.
I think what you have is you have Rebels nostalgia that is giving you like fog glasses.
Oh,
Kinda
no,
somebody
like Rebels. I am completely honest about Rebels. Rebels is the first 2 seasons of Rebels were utter trash.
Oh yeah.
Third season, upon the introduction of Thrawn, was good.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth season was fine until they jumped the shark and decided to bring back Ahsoka. Because introducing time travel to Star Wars ruins everything. Now, a little bit of interesting thing to note, we now have, on the left-hand side of the screen that people can see, we now have a live version of the chat, which will be showing up. I'm going to make it a little bigger, because I didn't realize how it would show up, so just give me a second to modify it. So now, the chat, at least the most recent chats, will show up on the chat, on the live stream, that people can see, and they can read. So, you're welcome. So, all of your message will be visible.
Yep. It'll definitely be a work in progress, just to make it visible and epic. Because I think the company that does it best is YouTube. YouTube does a great job of putting the chats right next to the live stream, so people can see them all together. But the problem is YouTube is a gigantic minefield.
YouTube is a trash heap.
YouTube is where conservatism goes to die.
Yes, that is
basically.
True.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that people we don't put all our content onto YouTube. The Daily Wire doesn't put all their content onto YouTube. Most people are streaming in other situations. Good evening, Tyler the Goat. Sup? So
the greatest of all time. He's got the skills, man. He's got the skills.
Well, but greatest of all time is just singular T. What is the double T?
Somebody else might have taken the single T.
Yes, we remember you from last week. You joined on last Thursday, Tyler.
Did he? Nice.
Yes.
Steven's on top of that. He keeps track.
Well, I try and remember people's names. It's very interesting and very difficult sometimes. So, as always, of course, we are streaming right now onto Twitch and Kick. And so, if you have comments, questions, things you want to say, just send it out. Of course, now that it's visible in the chat, we will have an easier time keeping track of it. And, of course, you can see your comments. And if you have hate mail, then, bring it on. We don't care.
We got this.
That being said, of course, Today is Tuesday Newsday. We welcome you back after a weekend, and we hope you enjoyed our interesting open mic night that we had on Thursday. Very interesting conversations.
Very long too.
Very long. It was 3 hours.
Yep.
Yeah, my coworker Cade was like, "Wow, how did you guys talk for 3 hours?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is the way it is, man."
We don't it's not. It's like the eternal quote from Shrek. It's like it can talk. It's like, yeah, it's getting it to shut up. That's the trick.
Getting it to shut up. Well, yeah, getting Danny to shut up about a topic that he
whatever. You're just as chatty. You're just as chatty.
I am not just as chatty. I am more succinct.
Who talked the entire time before we were setting up the show tonight?
Okay, I am more. I have more of a personal chance.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Anyways,
all right, Chad Monster, let's dive into it, man.
I'm just quickly posting the link to Northern Light, and then we will be on our way.
I thought he said he was succinct and efficient. You know,
I am. Well, I didn't say I was efficient. I said I was succinct.
Succinct. Okay, gotcha.
Efficiency is something I'm still working on because sometimes it's just like all over the place.
Sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't
what was that message? All right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see. Okay. So from Tyler the Goat, most Canadians are aware what happens in the U.S. while you don't know what's crap going over there. Yeah.
It's actually like pretty much it is a given feature of the Canada-U.S. Relationship. Canadians are obsessed. Like our politicians, Trudeau, and like all of the left-wing lunatics out there, and our politics, they're constantly talking about about American politics whenever they're referring to their opposition. They're always like, the American right-wing politics are coming here. The people are being influenced by those like extreme right-wing people in the States, and we can't get enough of American politics.
All right.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I'm gonna try. So I'm just resizing it a little bit.
Steve is playing with his new toy.
Well, I'm trying to make it so that people can see the posts. I think you can now see it. Tell me if it's like decently visible or not. Probably gonna have to full screen it in order to fully read on to all the comments.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress. We'll let it know. But let's get started. So we're gonna start off, and we might need to maneuver this. Yes, I do need to fix this. That's okay. That's okay. I can easily fix this.
All right, buddy. You got this. You got this. I believe in you. I believe.
Got it. Okay. So we're going to start off. Burning Man 2023. I didn't even know you had a tiny chat there. It's something we just recently implemented because people were saying often that we would respond to a comment if it was a short one. And they're like, what are you responding to? I don't see it. So that's why we're doing that. Just so that people can have something that they can see what we're responding to and interacting with in real time.
Chat,
So, Burning Man 2023. Nevada Rangers plow truck through Extinction Rebellion protest after the activists blocked road into festival, causing miles-long gridlock. Demonstrators sobbed as they were tackled by cops in Nevada on August 27th, which was 2 days ago. Officers from the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribal police force drove through the blockade. Activists were protesting the Burning Man festival over the use of private jets. Of all the things to protest at the Burning Man festival, the use of private jets.
I mean, you have to remember, Stephen, the people who do these climate protests are never rational.
No,
they never use rational. They're just like, we hate oil. Like, how did you get here? With cars, okay? And what are you using there? That's a phone made with oils. Yeah, it's like, okay, you're clearly an idiot. Sure am. It's like, you just like blew yourself to the road. It's like, how are you gonna get off? No idea. It's like, great. So my favorite part about this is like if you can actually play the video, Steven. So this video went viral all over social media, and this video was like this is kind of what I hope. I always hope that they would always do that. Like law enforcement would actually do a little bit of intimidation and discourage these these nut jobs from doing what they do, because this is not protesting. This is like basically a form of eco-terrorism.
Yeah.
Because what they're not just making their voices heard. They're literally like obstructing people
Yeah, they are.
and causing like major damage to like people's lives and people's and even to emergencies. Like it's this can actually become deadly. So, anyways, shows the video. Like they have a video on the site
Yep,
that
we
shows
do.
you the actual thing. So, see if you can
Here we
figure
go.
out see if you I want to see if you guys like what they do. I like it. Just plows right through it.
It's like, nope.
Boom.
Drive around, do it again.
Yep. Right. Oh, and
You better move.
better move. Gets out. Oh, it's over. That lady's scared.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
We're non-violent. I don't know if you can hear. One of the things that the police officer said is, "Who here has the weapon?" Did you hear that, Steven?
Mm-hmm.
Because apparently, when dispatch called them, they were told that somebody at this protest had a gun or like had a weapon.
No, you're on public property.
Well, this is why the cops had to get involved.
Yes.
Because
So
private citizens tried taking it down. But
yeah, well, if you could show that, show that, like maybe with like in the background with like like with the sound off, but we could talk about what they were doing.
Yeah.
So here, like what they're doing is like obviously private citizens are trying to take this thing down because obviously these people are they're lunatics, right? And here's what the lady did. Like, okay, if you watch as they're trying to move it, the lady, if you see in the video, she's actually in the act of tying herself to the actual structure. So then she could tell them, like, oh, I'm attached to this. Like, you're not going to move it with me on it, are you? And then, of course, as they're trying to move it, she falls over because she chained herself to the thing like an idiot. And now she's like, oh, you hurt me. Oh, my gosh, you're so mean. You hurt me. And like, this is what they do, right? Like, they basically, they don't respond to reason. They don't respond to logic. They're lunatics. These are people who have been convinced about the fear porn propaganda. They're basically like miniature Chicken Littles that believe that the whole world is shut down so that they can get their little protest. These are the most uncaring people on planet Earth. Like literally, they are uncaring people. They couldn't care less about anybody else or what their thing does to anybody else. It's all about them. It's all about like their right to protest. Like it's incredible that people put up with these people. But yeah, it was great. I was so happy to see police actually do something that most police officers don't do, which they basically just stand back, let them do their thing, and be like, oh, well, who cares about all the people that are being heavily impacted by these people, right?
Oh, Danny, your video froze.
My video froze? Okay.
Yeah, so maybe just quickly address that.
I will check that, but you keep going.
Yeah, no, like some people might make the comparison between having the protests that we saw, of course, back in 2022 with the convoy and what's going on here. And I see the primary difference is that the convoy is, of course, directly outside of a government facility. So that's first off. And second off is that the convoy was in the center of downtown. And there are many, many routes to get around it. Whereas in this, as far as I know, this was one of the only routes from that direction into Burning Man.
Yeah.
And so this is not something where it's like, oh, you can just find another way. It'll be like a 2-minute detour. This was like, no. Like this was an hour. I think it was almost an hour long of a line that they had. Like, this is not something that you could find another way in. And so this is more of an issue of you are blocking the only way in and out of something. And potentially if there was an issue, like, you don't know if a person there is having a heat stroke. You don't, like, as long as you don't give an out, you don't give an alternative, like even at the Coots blockade, They're like,
Yep.
oh, they blocked the Coots blockade. It's like, no.
No.
They gave them one lane.
Yep.
And that's enough. Even if these people be like, okay, we'll give you one lane. It's like, all right, fine. We'll make do with it because at least we have a way to get through and you're not completely blockading the way. Like we remember back a few weeks ago, watched that video of that lady who's like, I need to get to the hospital and you're blocking the entire road and I can't get to the hospital with my child who is facing a medical issue.
Yep.
These are the kind of people that will do that. They don't care what issues you're facing because their concerns and their priorities come first. And so it's a good thing that people are starting to stand up and say, enough is enough. And we're going to actually take the law, like in the case of those citizens, they'll take the law into their own hands. There's very little they can do. And then, of course, utilizing the police, which funny that the police are, of course, from the tribe that's nearby, so they can't claim that it's like, oh, this is white supremacy. No. This is tribal police forces taking out white people. So racism has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I think the officers, unless I'm mistaken, these are like, were these actually like tribal land officers?
Yeah, these were banned police officers.
Yeah, which means that these people kept claiming we're on public land. Turns out that they didn't realize that they're actually not on public land; they're on private land, which means that they're under the jurisdiction
of the private
of that band.
Yeah, which is why the police were so easily, or it was so easy for the police to take action. Whereas, of course, like you look at the stuff that happens in, say, New York, you look at the stuff that's Chicago, LA, and the police, their hands are tied because the city, they know that the city will take action against them, and if they take any serious action to imprison protesters or to actually punish them for breaking the law, or even rioters, the police will be punished and fired, and sometimes in the case of I forget exactly, I think the guy's name was Garrett. Like in some of these cases, if the police actually do their job properly, they'll be sent to jail, potentially facing a life sentence.
Yeah, and it should be like, okay, so here's one thing, that these climate protests would easily go away immediately. Like if imagine like you and I, Stephen, were given the power to decide policy on climate protests. Okay, how can you actually basically end what this is, which is not a protest? This is being a public nuisance. This is actually affecting other people and not a peaceful protest, right? How do you do it? First, every single time they assemble, you basically send in the police and you'd be like, arrest them immediately. Okay? These people are not willing to fight. They're literally just like, they literally sit there like pouty little kids and just demand that you drag them off the road. Okay? So they'll be easily taken off. Two, you make it so that repeat offenses of this kind of eco-terrorism carries substantially greater penalties.
Yep.
You will wear down their numbers very easily and very quickly if people are like, oh, my first offense is like, it's like a fine. My second offense is a much bigger fine. My third offense is like jail time. These people are not. These are not brave warriors who are willing to suffer and go through all sorts of like difficulties for their cause. They're not. These are like lazy, entitled, very they need like special treatment. They need like their soy latte, like extra foam, kind of like Starbucks drinks. They're not going to risk going to prison. They're not brave like a lot of the people that actually like legitimately took on jail time for their cause, including several pastors here in Alberta. That's not what they're like. You make those the actual act of being an absolute public nuisance, and these people will stop immediately. But they don't want to. That's the problem. People don't realize that the reason why these things are going and the reason why they keep happening is not because of these people. It's because the people in charge refuse to enforce the law. That's the only reason that this is happening. There's not their. I don't even blame them necessarily. These are just petulant children who are given way too much power.
Oh, and they've been told that basically it's like, oh no, they can't do anything to you. Like, even if you're breaking the law, Like,
Yeah.
because you're doing so for the sake of the climate, like, it doesn't matter what happens to you,
Mhm.
because you're doing it for the right cause, and no matter what, you can't negotiate, you can't come to any sort of compromise. You have to stand your ground no matter what. And other people who demand that you move, like, they're just evil, and they're fascists, and they're trying to destroy the planet. It's like,
Yeah.
these are the
Now,
people that you're negotiating with.
now given that, I will say that the guys in the next video,
Mm-hmm.
they actually kind of like, I'm like, okay, you actually put a little bit more effort into your little climate protest, so I'll give you some credit.
Mhm.
I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, these are not brilliant people, but
Not exceptional, no.
I will give them, like, some
A
credit
modicum of credit.
for actually, like, like putting some effort into it. I think this is in Germany. Yeah, it's German. There goes little hatchback. This guy just lied down. Please run me over, please. Please, sir, run me over.
This is like, I'm gonna slowly
Yep.
move.
Yep.
You're like, I'm gonna just sit in your car. It's like, okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna just slowly move. I'm not gonna hurt you.
And the best part, the road is wet.
Yeah.
So they
you
have no
just
traction.
And then, of course, he clears the road for everybody else.
Yep. There you
And
go.
then he goes in reverse.
Yep. And they're just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
At this point. They're just hanging on. It's like, we're going for a ride, boys. Off we go. At that point, you should have just sped up.
Oh, I would have sped up and then have braked. Have them
Yep.
fall backwards. Be like, I didn't hit
Oh, yeah.
you.
Yep.
You fell off my car.
Yep. As far as they go. But there was a video I saw like last week. It was a guy who was like, okay, I don't know if you ever saw this video. It was a guy who was taking a selfie video, I guess,
Mhm.
of like this really nice car. And the guy who owned the car, like a very expensive sports car, he's like, gets out. He's like, "What the heck are you doing, man? Don't get away from my car!" And the guy literally like just ignores him, and he literally goes and sits and lays back on the car. And the second the guy does that,
Oh.
the owner of the car literally smacks him in the back of the head, just punches the guy. The guy's like, "Whoa!" And he literally falls over, and he smacks him a couple more times, like punches him like full on. And the guy literally like tries to run away because his phone like went flying and all that kind of stuff. And I was in my head, I was like, good. Good. Because at that point, that person is no longer just like, harmless. They're literally touching your property.
Yeah.
That is a very expensive car. And you, like, anybody knows, like, commonsensically, you don't touch somebody's car. That's their property. You can cause them. You can cause damage to the car. You can cause like scratches. You can bend the hood or whatever. You can do all sorts of things that cost them money. At that point, when you actually are damaging people's property, they now have a right to basically fight back. So with those German protesters, like, I would actually say, like, you legitimately would have a case and being like, these idiots are literally like leaning, like they're literally laying on your car. That at this point, you're like, yep, I'm gonna get out of the car and punch you both in the head and be like, get the heck out of my way. You're gonna stay there, I will punch you again. Like, literally at that point. Because they're not just like being harmless, you're intruding on them. Like, they're literally like risking and damaging your property. At that point, like, like, nope, all bets are off. You're now like, you no longer have the right of like, like, oh, I'm not doing anything. It's like somebody who's saying like, not touching you, like that little game when they try to like put their finger right by your face. They're not touching you. When they actually touch you, it's over. It's the same rule applies when you're touching somebody's vehicle. So I think that these, I'm hoping that these climate protesters, that people will finally get fed up with them, and that people will actually start pushing back enough that the police will actually be forced to have to do something, because like people are just getting sick of it. And I wouldn't put up with that kind of stuff if it happened in my city
Totally.
as well. Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
All right, buddy. What else we got?
Anyway, so talking about things that are ridiculous. So we've been told for a very long time that, we're doing paper straws for the sake of the environment. Yeah, that's bogus. Scientific study claims paper straws are not environmentally friendly or safe for human health.
Whoa, color me shocked.
Oh, yeah.
Steven, do you remember? Are you old enough to remember, like when they were like calling about the planet and they try to ban paper and ban paper bags and all that kind of stuff because of the rainforest? Do you
Yeah.
like? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
That used to
because
be
you're
a big
chopping down trees for the rainforest.
Yeah, we're like killing the trees. We can't do that. And then suddenly, like trees are we can kill as many trees as we want, make as much paper as we want, no problem. So it's funny how that changed.
Yep.
But yeah, so what did the study say?
So this study says, dun, 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 according to a report that was published on August 24th, the widespread trend for restaurants, bars, and fast food establishments to utilize paper straws instead of plastic ones is no longer considered environmentally healthy as it was once believed. Research from Belgium that was published in the journal Food Additives and Contaminants stated the majority of paper and bamboo straws examined contained forever chemicals, or PFAs. Additionally, the study concluded that PFAs are much less prevalent in plastic straws. The Belgian investigation followed a 2021 American probe that discovered 21 PFAs in paper and other plant-based straws, but no detectable concentrations in plastic ones. So that's the harm to humans, but that substance is also harmful to the ecosystem.
Go figure.
So these so-called eco-friendly plant-based straws are not necessarily a more sustainable alternative to plastic straws, since they can bring on an additional source of PFAS exposure in both humans and the environment. For example, after degradation in landfills or through incomplete incineration. These findings were also highlighted by USA Today. Researchers claim that the presence of PFAS may be explained by contaminated soil or an unforeseen side effect of material recycling, even though manufacturers may purposely cover their plant-based straws in chemicals to make them water repellent. So there's a solution. It's called Go Back to Plastic, you fools.
We were doing just fine with plastic.
Well, because plastic ones, you can recycle them. You can turn them into other things.
And there are actual recyclable, plastics, like compostable ones.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
But we've been moving towards these stupid paper straws. And it's been interesting because whenever I grab a paper straw from somewhere, like at the university, whenever I grab a Slurpee on a hot day, I'll grab 2 straws.
Yeah.
Because the first one will degrade by the time I get
Starbucks
on my way home.
When I went to Starbucks, like the drive-through, the guy actually gave me 2 straws.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you give me an extra straw. It's like, yeah, you'll probably need it.
You'll probably need it.
They'll probably need it for the whole thing. It's like everybody knows that this is stupid, but they still do it. And this is like the fundamental issue that happened during COVID, which is everyone understood. There was a universal understanding that this is stupid, but we're still going to do it. Like that, the whole idea of like, you walk into a restaurant, everyone has to be wearing your masks, and you walk to your table wearing your little like face diaper, and the second you sit down, you can magically take your mask off. Everyone knew that was stupid. You did not have to convince people, but they still did it.
Well, they still did.
And that's the crazy thing. I had a discussion like a couple years ago with my sister about the idea of plastic straws. I was like, I basically try to explain to her, okay, what's the rationale? What is the rationale for plastic straws? Or sorry, for paper straws? The rationale was the sea turtles. Oh my goodness, ocean pollution. We have to stop using straws because of oceans. I'm like, do you have any idea how many like plastic items end up in the oceans from Canada? And she's like, she didn't know the number. And I'm like, it was like less than like 0.0. Like it was like it was infinitesimal. It was very tiny, like 0.001 like it was tiny. And I was like, it's even lower in Calgary. Yep. Calgary is land-based. We do not send our garbage to the ocean. We put it in landfills. And I don't know if there's a wormhole that magically makes the landfill stuff go into the oceans, but it doesn't. Okay? No. So I basically proved to her, I'm like, we basically can, all of Canada can magically stop using plastic straws, and guess how much impact that's going to have on the oceans? 0. Because most of the ocean plastic, like 9 out of 10, like, or what's it like 90% of the ocean plastic comes from 10 rivers?
Yeah.
Like in Asia, Africa, and like maybe one in South America or something like that. 10 rivers. That's where it all comes from. So we basically would do nothing to solve the problem of ocean plastic. And my sister was like, well, we should still do it. And I'm like, I literally just proved to you that it wouldn't make a lick of difference. What is your rationale for doing it? Oh, it's just a good idea to to do it to set a good example for the kids. So the example is, hey kids, we should do completely and totally pointless things that make a massive inconvenience to everyone to accomplish nothing.
To accomplish
So
nothing.
yeah, that's basically what she was advocating for, and she was so convinced of it. And I'm like, how can I work with people like this?
Well,
when,
like talking about stuff that like we've been trying to convince people for a very long time that this is something which is completely fabricated. Let's talk about the masks,
the face diapers,
and like there's even more evidence. So from Earth.com, COVID masks may expose users to harmful chemicals. No duh.
Of course they did.
Recent study published in the journal Ecotoxicity and Environmental Safety and on the National Institutes of Health website suggests that wearing N95 COVID masks, specifically KN94, may expose individuals to a dangerous level of toxic volatile organic compounds, or TVOCs. Researchers from John Book National University in South Korea analyzed 2 types of disposable medical grade masks and several reusable cotton masks. They found the chemicals released by these masks at 8 times the recommended safety limits of TVOCs. An increase in the concentration of environmental particulate matter and the spread of COVID-19 virus has dramatically increased our time spent wearing masks. Well, not for some people. If harmful chemicals are released from these masks, they may have harmful effects on human health, wrote the study authors. Exposure to TVOCs has been associated with health issues like headaches and nausea, and prolonged and repeated exposure has been linked to organ damage and even cancer. It's clear that particular attention must be paid to the VOCs associated with the use of KF94 masks and their effects on human health, the researchers stated. Yeah, this is very, very obvious. We have been trying to fix this problem. Like, we have been trying to address this problem. We did an entire 2-hour show about the danger of masks, and that wasn't even mentioning this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's just thing after, like, point after point after point after point. And at this point, like, the people that are still defending wearing masks, you have to question their sanity and their level of competence. It's like, okay, are you either insane or are you a moron? Because if you're still wearing a mask in today's day and age, and especially if you're still demanding that people mandate one, you're out of your damn mind.
Yeah, I think the problem is that you can tell there's 2 kinds of people, Stephen. There are the people who actually like look into things themselves, who actually do this, like they study, they look at the studies, they analyze the evidence, and they make decisions for themselves. And then there's the other kind of people, the ones that get all of their marching orders from the so-called experts, or the credential class, right? And these are the people that listen to like a CTV news report on TV, and it tells them like, you should wear a mask again. Like, listen to this handpicked expert from the University of so and so that's going to tell you this. Oh, well, that person's got credentials. I guess they know everything, so I should listen to them.
Yeah.
It's that's the kind of thinking that leads to this kind of like behavior.
Oh, it's utterly ridiculous.
People are generally very they don't want to go against the crowd. Like, remember that experiment? There's that experiments that they've done in so they did this experiment. They put people on an elevator.
Yeah.
And then everyone suddenly turned around. They literally turned around and faced the back of the elevator. And the people who were like there.
Whose mic is quiet? Okay? Is it mine? I can fix my mic. That's easy.
Oh, okay. So they turned around, and then people who were on the elevator who didn't know what was going on, they would slowly be like looking around, wondering what's going on. And eventually people would get off the elevator, new people would get on, and everyone was doing the same thing. And by the end of the elevator ride, the people who didn't know what was going on, they were now facing the back, or at least like heavily leaning towards facing the back, because people are socially conditioned to basically follow the crowd. That's the psychology that these organizations are doing in changing behavior. I think the British government, I think you and I talked about this, the British government at one point, they admitted, there was an article about it, they admitted they were using psychological conditioning on the populace, and they were really kind of like, yeah, this might be a little unethical. It's like, you think a little unethical? Yeah. So
no, like so much. Well, like not even to mention the ethical aspect of having these consistent arguments of it's like, oh yeah, we need to mandate masks. It's like, okay, is that not only is that scientific, but is that something we should be doing from a moral and ethical standpoint? Like, really? Should we be mandating something that is proven not to provide any positive net gain in terms of resistance to acquiring respiratory viruses? Of course not. That's ridiculous. But they don't care. It's all about the virtue signaling. It's all about pushing a narrative.
Yeah.
And
this time
the
around,
people, I'm gonna switch up this next story. The people in the next story are prime examples of willing to do whatever it takes, whatever they deem necessary to push their narrative.
or at least people who are willing to walk. Oh, you doing this one? Okay,
Yes.
go for it.
So, protest in Vancouver calling on health officials to reinstate mask mandates ended with a fight. Between 3 people's COVID-19 cases in Canada increased by 11%. Ooh, it's so bad. So in the video, supporters of the protest can be seen lined up holding signs outside of the BC Minister of Health, Adrian Dix's office, calling for mask mandates to be reinstated in the province. As the video continues, 3 men can be seen fighting near the end of the line of protesters. One of them said that a man not seen wearing a mask attacked another who was wearing a mask. I watched the video, and then I find that outcome to be very unlikely. I'll tell you what I think happened here. So, go back.
So stay here with us, and let's continue to...
So, a fight breaks out. He's clearly grabbing the guy's mask. Grabbing the guy's sign. They force him to the sign and force him to the ground and steal his sign. And then he tries to grab his sign back.
Alright, I don't know what the hell's happening here. Let him go, dude. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go.
And then they block him.
Why are you blocking my camera?
It's like,
Don't want people to see what happens at the...
Don't want people to see. Don't want people to cover what's going on. Like, that's the ridiculous level. It's like, why don't you want, like, people who commit violence to be arrested? Like, by all accounts, you look at that video. By all accounts, the guy tried to steal the individual's sign, and he fought back, as was his right, because you cannot steal someone's property. And then they're like, oh, no, he attacked him. It's like, no. If I damage your sign, if I try and steal it from you, you have a right to take it back. That's a simple point of fact. Yes, we know who Andy No is. Andy No calls out Antifa. He's a very good on-the-ground journalist.
That's a good job.
Yes, Master Voltaire. He just wants his sign back. That's all he wants to do.
Yep. That's the kind of stuff that they always do.
Yep. Oh, and then you posted the summary of every mask. You okay, I will say you did a great job putting together all the stuff on masks. It was very... It's not succinct in any way, but it's very elaborate.
No, but like what I did. So just a quick, because the way I put it is that, okay, masks is a very big, very complex issue, because you like we were saying before, it's not like one study done. It's like it's a conversation.
Yeah.
The problem is that people are convinced that they've heard the talking point that the science is settled, or experts agree, or science says, or that kind of stuff. The problem is that people are usually they don't know how to research, and so they don't know where to find the articles that actually prove that masks don't work. So like you and I have talked about masks for over the last couple of years. And so I've compiled, the reason I post this is because I have compiled like hundreds of studies, hundreds of articles, hundreds of things that have basically talked about masks and why they don't work. And so the reason I'm posting these articles in the chat is because I'm trying to show you we've done the work. I'm not saying that like I'm an expert. I'm saying that there's enough volume of information out there
Mhm.
that if you actually take the time to look through the studies, to study what's out there actually on masks, you would be amazed at how much they've lied to you. Okay? Okay, so no.
Mhm.
I know people like to argue this and they try to make the case. Usually their arguments are not solid. All right? They're basically arguments that they're based on like low quality studies or something like that. Okay, so no, it's not. Masks for viruses are not effective, and there's multiple places that have demonstrated that this is not the case. Okay, people who like argue this, they usually argue it from like not from an evidentiary standard, but from like, I've heard this somewhere, some expert said this, or some important organization said this, and so they're right because they're a big, bold, like important organization, and usually they haven't actually looked at the science itself. If I'm wrong, happy to do it, but you have
Mhm.
to overcome like hundreds of studies,
Yes.
hundred. The Brownstone Institute, and I'll put this. I'll finish with this study last. But there's a study by the Brownstone Institute. I'll put it right in the chat. 150 studies. People who say like there's not a single study that proves that masks don't work against viruses. No, that was like, and this is an older article, but 150 studies that have basically like, oh no, actually 170. They've already updated 170 comparative studies and articles that demonstrate that masks don't work or they're ineffective and that they're harmful. So no, yeah, people who argue that masks work, they have a lot of evidence to present. So yeah, and like you said, like just show one RCT proving the masks work against what, Stephen? Masks do work for some things.
Oh, yes, they
but
do work
what
for some things, but provide one RCT study proving masks work for ILIs, which is influenza-like illnesses.
Yes.
Which COVID is.
Oh, give me a break. Okay, I will. Sorry, I need to put this out there. Give me a break. This is the most
How does media bias
disingenuous
fact
argument.
check view CNN?
That
That'd
is
be
the
hilarious.
most disingenuous attack.
Would you like the CDC, bud? I could sort the CDC.
There's one thing that always bugs me about people who are not on. They're just not serious people. They're you present them with an article that links to like over 170 studies, and they refuse to even look at it. They're like, well, that's not the right source.
Oh, you're literally a communist. Okay, so how do you feel about the hundreds of millions that communists have killed in the past, decade? In the past, no, not decade, century.
100 years, yeah, 100 years.
Yeah. Like if you're talking about like trying to promote the best for human lives, communism is not that.
Yeah, it's like I cannot stand the genetic fallacy argument. This is like such a dishonest way of engaging. I'm happy to talk to you about it, but the genetic fallacy, it's so dishonest. It's like I serve you like a steak, and you're like, I refuse to eat that steak because it's on a white plate, and like anything white is bad. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with the steak. It's like, no, it's on a white plate, so I refuse to eat it.
It's called the genetic fallacy.
It's called the genetic fallacy. Look it up on just Google it. A genetic fallacy is basically saying that thing is invalid, or that argument is invalid, or the evidence is invalid because it's in the wrong place.
Yeah,
that's basically what a genetic fallacy is.
Do not address the point simply from where the link came from. Go into the article and address it from there. Like when somebody presents me with a study, I will open up that study and I'm like, okay, this is where that study is wrong. Like somebody over the weekend tried to present me with this study saying, oh yes, like homosexuality has a genetic link. And then in like one of the first lines of the study, they say, oh yes, only 8 to 15% of homosexual behavior can be linked to genetics. And I'm like, that's your argument? That's the basis for this study is 8 to 15%? It's complete BS.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say this. I have had people send me articles from like the Daily Beast, from like MSNBC, from media sites that are clearly extremely biased to the left, that are like known that are actually like, known to be like very like low quality, like articles that like that play fast and loose with the truth. And I will still see do they link to the study? Because I was still like fact check the study. But science is based to the left. Yo,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Biased to the left. Oh my gosh.
No, it's not.
Science is not
Science doesn't have a political ideology.
No, science is a methodology. Scientists, the
Are
people who
biased to the
interpret
left because
and
they're
who make
constantly
inferences.
wrong.
Yes. Science does not have a political ideology. It is like purely objective. But scientists are the ones who like skew things right or left or like misuse it. So yeah, no, I'm sorry. This is just really silly. Oh my gosh.
It's
By the way,
funny.
this is what we deal with all the time. We deal with people who don't engage honestly. It's like prove to me the masks don't work. I'm like,
We
here's an
literally
article. Here's an article that shows 170 studies and many comparative studies that like all of these studies basically like prove. We just provided you with 170 studies. It's like, that doesn't count. Well, why not? Oh, because it's in the wrong place. I'm like, okay. Like, do you want me to send you each individual study and you'll find some excuse for why it doesn't work? It's like they're just not. This is not honest. The dialogue. It's just my goodness.
Anyways, so let's talk about these. Let's continue to talk about other things in the realm of science and climate.
Mm-hmm.
The deadly Maui fires. Many had no warning and no way out because those who dodged a barricade survived.
Yeah, by the way, human barricades. These are police. Yeah.
As flames tore through a West Maui neighborhood, car after car fleeing residents headed for the only paved road out of town in a desperate race for safety. A car after car was turned back toward the rapidly spreading wildfire by a barricade blocking access to Highway 30. One family swerved around the barricade and was safe in a nearby town 48 minutes later. Another drove their four-wheel drive car down the dirt road to escape. One man took a dirt road uphill, climbing above the fire and watching as Lahaina burned. He later picked his way through the flames, smoke, and rubble to pull survivors to safety. But dozens of others found themselves caught in the hellscape, their cars jammed together on a narrow road, surrounded by flames on three sides and the rocky ocean waves to the fourth. Some died in their cars while others tried to run for safety. You could see from the bypass that people were stuck on their balconies, so I went down and checked it out. We made several trips to town to look for survivors. What he found was horrible, with dead bodies in flames, just like a hellish movie scene. I could see that people were on fire, though the fire was just being soaked by the wind and being pushed towards the homes. The road closures, some because of the fire, some because of the downed power lines, contributed to making the historic Lahaina site the deadliest wildfire in more than a century. Were there many problems that day, and in some ways the disaster began long before the fire started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, this is so much of this is just like, there are many reasons why we don't trust many levels of government. Like, we're on board in that, in a lot of regards, we don't trust much of what the government says. The government, especially when it's kind of pushing an agenda, like, I don't trust almost anything that the government of Calgary says.
Mm-hmm.
Because the government of Calgary is not trying to act in the best interests of the people. They're trying to push a narrative.
Yeah, and they engage in what we call spin.
Yes.
We saw that in real time here with we went to rallies. They totally mischaracterized what the people at the rallies were like, which is part of the reason why we started interviewing people at rallies. They lied through their freaking teeth about the person that went into like a female change room in a pool here, and they basically said like, well, it's not a violation because there was no indecent exposure. What they didn't tell you is that because they changed the definition of like man and woman, they basically they redefined what indecent exposure is. And so basically they lied to the public, they lied through their teeth to try to like protect a transgender individual from getting any kind of like flack or pushback or something like that. They're like it's incredible. These people are like blatant liars. They could have defended and just taken a position and said like, yep, there was a man. He definitely exposed himself to women and girls and all that. But because of the new rules about like about transgender,
Can't say that
totally.
stuff.
No, they went beyond that and literally like created a lie based on like creative like use of language. It's very like just super sketchy how they acted. And I'm like, this is our police service. I'm like, dang, these people are super, super dishonest. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Now the thing about the Maui fire, Stephen. I keep hearing like stories, reading stories. There's something really bizarre, like
Mhm.
legitimately bizarre about that whole situation.
Yeah.
Um, from like the media silence that has been imposed like very heavily. Like there's like literally people are not allowed to go in, take videos or pictures. The reporters are not allowed to like to cover it.
Mhm.
It legitimately has all the hallmarks of a cover up. Like they're trying to cover up how bad this was,
Yeah.
and it sounds to me like there's potentially some kind of like very nefarious behavior by the officials that they don't want to get out. Like some people were speculating, and again, this is just pure speculation. But in the absence of like honesty and transparency, people are forced to basically like speculate. And some of the speculations are everywhere as bad as like people. Some people believe that maybe like they set the fires on purpose to try to like open up land for like rich companies or rich people to buy
To buy
waterfront
up houses
property.
and yeah.
Some people believe that this was like something like an intentional like fire set by the authorities, either the American authorities or foreign like countries or something like that. That something about this smells rotten, and I would recommend if you have a chance, maybe look into it because it something about this is really fishy,
Mhm.
and I'm really concerned that they're hoping that eventually, after being out of the news cycle long enough, people will just stop caring, and then they'll have gotten away from it. But I have a feeling like this is one of those things where if we actually knew the truth, it might be quite shocking how bad
Oh,
this is.
I don't doubt it. Do not doubt it.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
And by the way, like there's another just a quick side note. You heard that there's another storm heading to Florida, right?
Mhm.
Right. So I think we're going to see a masterclass once more of like proper leadership with Ron DeSantis
Mhm.
because he did a great job with the hurricane
Oh yeah.
that plowed through Florida. What was that? A couple years ago? 2 years ago?
Yes.
Yes, and he did a great job. Everyone praised him for it.
Mhm.
Whereas Biden he's got the Hawaii like disaster. He's got the one in East
Oh, he's got
Palestine.
disaster after disaster where he basically
He's
either doesn't show up or he'll
Yep.
show up at such a time when it's utterly meaningless and then he'll make it all about him. Like I
Mhm.
look back, like do you remember that they played it a few times on several different channels? The the comments that he made about the Hawaii fire.
Who was
He's
this?
like Biden. And he's like, "Oh
Biden.
yeah, uh I had a kitchen fire once that was
Yeah,
put out
yeah.
within a few minutes, but I know what it's like to have the
Uh,
trepidation of potentially losing a house." And it's like, oh yeah, you definitely had a threat of losing your house in your like exceptionally large home where you didn't have a serious fire at all, and it was put
yeah.
out within a few minutes.
A lot
Compared
of
to these
people
people
felt
who have
like
lost lives and lost their
yeah.
kids and lost, yeah, not even
Talk about being
close.
tone deaf, right? A lot of people felt like it would have been better if he said nothing
Yeah,
than to say that. Like they felt it was like so
like
incredibly
the
insensitive.
only thing that Biden should have said be like, we think about the families, we think about the children,
Yeah.
and then like the statement that he said about the firefighters, be
Mhm.
like, oh, like God made everybody else and then he made firefighters, be
Mhm.
like extolling the virtues of the heroes
Mhm.
that tried to fight this fire. Like that's something that you can say.
Mhm.
Like mourn for the losses of those that have lost, and then
Absolutely.
extol the virtues of those who have performed heroic tasks and heroic deeds.
Mhm.
Those are
Yeah.
the things you can focus on. You can focus on yourself. That's being a selfish bastard.
Yeah, I remember like hearing Dan Bongino, who has worked as a Secret Service agent in the
Mm-hmm.
past. He was talking about how like every president, like from Obama to Bill Clinton to um, George W. Bush, they all basically dealt with like tragedies that happened during their administration, and they did it in different ways. Like Bill Clinton and Obama, they definitely knew what to say. They knew how to like play the game and how to say the right things to try to like to try to at least make it seem like they're at least helping in some way and showing that their president's like on their back. He said that George W. Bush was like people didn't realize how much he actually he was kind of like Trump in that he would actually go out of his way to listen and to talk to the people in tragedies, and actually talk to them and listen to them and pray with them and all that. Like, that's one of the things that people never really heard about George W. Bush. So it's like, this is not normal behavior for a president at all.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was like Trump was always the master class. He was like, there were so many stories of him just doing amazing things for people after tragedies. So it was great. It was great to see him. And then we're seeing this from this president. Like, this is the kind of stuff that if it was a Republican president, he would be grilled. And like, people would like just absolutely like this would be a nonstop scandal. Like, Trump like did the most horrible like mishandling of this like crisis. Biden's done like several now. And it's like, it shows you how powerful the media is at protecting those that they want to protect. Because if the media treated Biden anywhere close to how they treat Trump, Biden would have been out so long ago. People would hate him with a passion. Because if you actually look tit for tat what Biden has done and how he's behaved compared to Trump, it's no question. Biden is an absolute creep. He's a horrible racist. Like, legitimately, like he has said more racist things than I could imagine, and he is incredibly incompetent. Like, it's not even comparable. Trump is a masterclass of a good leader, and definitely a good president that Biden could never be. So yeah, so Maui, we feel bad. Like, the people there, it's an unfathomed. Yeah, they suffered. So hearts go out to them for sure, because that sucks. Like. Like, people in Kelowna, I know a lot of people there lost their homes. Nothing close to what happened in Maui.
Yeah. The death toll is absolutely insane.
Nasty.
But let's move on to other things that are absolutely insane. The school board or a student kicked out of classroom for wearing a Gadsden flag patch because it's racist.
Yeah. Actually, can you put the play the video for this one, and then we can read the story. There's a video. Yeah, there's a video in there, right there. And then there's a story about like the.
Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag.
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed, is due to its origins with slavery, and that is what was that's the reasoning behind it.
What?
The Gadsden flag.
The "Don't Tread on Me."
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay. So he's what's going to happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class. Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back if it's got a patch on it, because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery.
It has nothing to do
with
yeah.
They were fighting the British. Like, that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate flag.
Okay, I
Is
am
there
just
history
here
to
to
that
enforce.
you can
No, I am here to enforce the policy that was.
I'm just
provided.
following orders.
I know nothing.
Helpless sheep.
Definitely, you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
because the
absolutely.
ACLU says that he's allowed to wear that. If you like go on their website, it's like says in big letters.
All I'm saying is that
unless there's like a ban on patches, period. Like if you said there's no patches allowed at the school, you cannot display what you think or anything like that, or what cheer or anything like that.
Selective enforcement.
I think it's like one-sided, because you allow some patches but not other patches.
Kids have patches like other names and like the American flag and backpacks.
Yeah, that was like flown during the revolution with. I just don't understand that at all.
So
My favorite.
It's so ridiculous.
You know, my favorite comeback to people who say that. they're like, when they say like, like, oh, it's a racist thing. I'm like, all right, got one thing to say for you. Prove it.
Yep.
Literally, make me the case that is racist. Don't just say, oh, this is a thing, and be like, well, that I proved my point. I'm like, no. You have to actually argue. You can't just, that's just begging the question. This woman is a beautiful picture of what every other authority figure over the last like 3 years has been doing. It's like you thought this, like you go to a store, the person at the front's like, oh, you have to have a mask. Like, why do I have to have a mask? Oh, I'm just, you got to wear it. Like, do you know that masks don't work? I can show you like a million studies. It's like, oh, I'm just following orders. I'm just doing what I'm told. Like this is the way that people operate. And it's ironic because the Gadsden flag, the whole purpose of the flag is what, Stephen? What is the message that the flag is basically trying to argue?
Well, it's a simple one. And it's if the government decides to mess with my life, then I'm not going to stand up for it.
Do not comply. That's basically the messaging with the flag. And like,
well, and it was the entire, so this is the history. So I have this from Britannica.com. So
put it on screen.
Flag features. Okay, I can feature it right here.
Thank you, sir.
No, that is the what? I totally copied what?
Put it for the masses.
I copied that. Stupid.
Good old technology.
There you go. Okay, Gadsden flag. Also called the Hopkins flag. Flag features a coiled rattlesnake. It was one of several contemporary flags that used an image of a rattlesnake, which had become a popular symbol of unity amongst the American colonies. The rattlesnake symbol originated in the 1754 political cartoon Join or Die, published in Benjamin Franklin's Pennsylvania Gazette. The cartoon, which depicted the colonies divided as segments of a cut-up snake, exhorted the colonists to unite in the face of a French and Indian War, was later used to represent unity during the Revolutionary War. Claimed that the drum of the newly created Marine Corps displayed a rattlesnake alongside the motto, "Don't tread on me." So it was entirely a symbol, not of racism. It was a symbol of resistance against tyranny to King George. That was all it was.
Of course. Yes.
This lady has no clue. And now, of course, the Gadsden flag is continuing that kind of tradition. And the Gadsden flag is about standing up to government overreach and government tyranny.
Yep.
And it's like, no, don't tread on me. And then I have my Canadian version. My please leave me alone.
Yeah, with the Canadian goose, right?
Yeah, the Canadian goose going honk.
That's code for Hail Hitler. You know, come on.
Oh yeah,
honk.
Honk.
According to our illustrious, minister of
oh man,
mental health, right?
Stupid.
Minister of mental health is actually like said something as stupid as like Hong Kong means Hail Hitler.
Yeah,
it's like good job, lady. Good job.
Good job. You're an idiot.
Yeah. But by the way, this story. So the story about this kid. Obviously, because I think because it got so much media attention, got highlighted. It sounds like the school board basically caved and decided, like, yeah, this is bad publicity. Let's not.
So, Vanguard School District. Upon learning of these events, the Vanguard School Board of Directors called an emergency meeting. From Vanguard's founding, we have proudly supported our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and ordered liberty that Americans have enjoyed. For almost 250 years, the Vanguard School recognized the historical significance of the Gadsden flag as its place in history. The incident is an occasion for us to reaffirm our deep commitment to classical education in support of these American values. At this time, the Vanguard School Board and the district informed the student's family that he may attend school with the Gadsden flag patch visible on his backpack. Good.
Amen.
A rare victory for common sense in the schools.
I think like what happened is the school probably saw where if we get sued on this, we're not going to win.
Oh, no. Definitely.
And we're probably going to have to pay out a whole bunch of money, get sued on this kind of stuff. As much as you like to believe that, like, these school boards like make decisions based on reason and logic. You know that most school boards around the world, or especially around the United States and Canada, they are filled with ideologues. Now that being said, it's still good to see that when you actually get pushback, they might actually be willing to kind of be like, yeah, we're not going to fight this fight, we're not going to win this, and that's something I'm really really happy about. So good on him, good on this kid and the mom for like pushing back on this. I thought it was really smart of the mom to record that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was instrumental in making sure that she got a good outcome of this. So always remember, one of the best things that you could use to protect yourself against any kind of tyranny is video. That's the thing. That's pretty much the only thing that helped save Kyle Rittenhouse. Actually, I would say the amount of videos out there, like, basically made it impossible to convict that kid of anything else than like self-defense. So good job to this mama. Well done, Mama Bear.
Mm-hmm. Well done indeed.
All right, what you got next, man?
All right. So what's next is Joe Biden talking about government corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So more things are coming to light. Fired Ukrainian prosecutor Shokin says Joe and Hunter Biden did take bribes. They were behind his ousting. Of course they were. Isn't that corruption alone? He says in preview of a bombshell interview. Time is firing Shokin was investigating for oil company Burisma Holdings. Joe Biden is alleged to have threatened to withhold. Well, no, that's not alleged. He claims it himself. Like, isn't that?
I listened to the Daily.
Yes,
I listened to the Daily Wire talk about that. The reason why they say alleged is because the question is whether or not. No. The question is not whether or not, whether or not he was solely responsible for that outcome. Like, what they're saying is that there's question about whether or not.
Well, no,
this
but
was
like, if you look at this phrasing, he's alleged to have threatened to withhold $1 billion.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not disputing what he said. I'm not disputing what he said about.
You're alleging that he would.
So what the and by the way, this is not me saying this. The question is whether or not he was privy to information that because they're saying that there was councils in Congress and different people that basically were all involved in making the decision contingent on whether or not they could fire this guy. So his defense, his plausible deniability, is not based on denying what he said in that interview. Is based on whether or not this was already in the works, and he just happened to use that as a almost like as a bluff. That's basically the argument that I've heard. Because I was like, it seems pretty like open and shut. Question isn't whether or not he made those statements and that threat and that threatening to withhold, but whether or not he was just like acting on something that was already in. That's the argument. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that's what I've heard as the justification or explanation from the Democrats about what actually happened there. Again, I don't know how true it is, but it sounds like there's some details around that. Anyways, go on.
Yeah. Anyways, so he was ousted as Ukraine's top prosecutor in 2016, made the accusations during excerpts of an upcoming explosive interview airing on Fox News. At the time of his firing, he was investigating oil company Burisma. I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that yes, this was the case. They were being blamed. Shokin says in the clip of the interview, the fact that Joe Biden gave away $11 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption? He continues in another clip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
It sure is.
So you, of course, can watch the full interview at 8 p.m. Eastern with Brian Kilby, if you want to. For years, these false claims have been debunked. No matter, of course, the White House is saying, for years, these false claims have been debunked. And no matter how much airtime Fox gives them, they will remain false. Yes, in about 3 months, based on what the White House has said about these things and what Joe Biden has said about these things, in about 3 months, to be like, well, yes, he fired him because of that, but it was also for a good reason. Like, they'll just change their tune by just a little amount. Because, of course, we all know how much they've changed it when it came to Hunter. It was like, I never talked about my son, never talked about my son about his business arrangements. I only talked to my son a little bit. Oh, we only talked about the weather. We didn't talk about, like, foreign business deals. It's like, okay, it's pretty different than what you were saying, like, 5 months ago. It's like, seems like you don't really have any consistency, man. Like you're just a liar. But, more evidence that the guy is a liar. National Archives has 5,400 Biden emails in which he uses fake names to dish government info to Hunter.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy when I saw that.
Oh, that's absolutely nuts.
Mhm.
So all this...
Do you know how they found that out? How they everything that info? Because of the Hunter
Freedom of Information Act?
No, it was actually because of the Hunter Biden laptop. They were able to dig into it, and that's how they found out. If that laptop had never been like not leaked, but if Hunter Biden wasn't a complete and total drug head who forgot it and all that, we may never have found this out. So Joe Biden is basically being raked through the coals because his son basically was the Fredo to the Biden crime family.
Oh yeah, he kind of exposed the wrongdoings. But yes, the National Archives confirmed the existence of a trove in response to a June 2022 Freedom of Information Act request by the Southeastern Legal Foundation, a non-profit constitutional legal group. Recent requests sought emails pertaining to the accounts of Robert Ware, Robert L. Peters, and J.R.B. Ware, pseudonyms the 80-year-old president was known to use while in the White House during his time as President Barack Obama's vice VP. So the foundation on Monday filed suit against NARA for the release of the records, which the group claims they may show that Biden forwarded government information and discussed government business with his son Hunter. All too often, public officials abuse their power by using it for their personal and political benefit. While they do, many seek to hide it. The only way to preserve governmental integrity is for NARA to release Biden's nearly 5,400 emails to SLF and thus the public. The American public deserves to know what's in them. That's true. And then eventually they did release them. And so we performed a search of our collection of the vice presidential records related to your inquiry and have identified approximately 5,138 email messages, 25 electronic files, and 200 pages of potentially responsive records that must be processed in order to respond to your request. So they're still stalling in order to try and process this. But the truth is, it's like, okay, well, this is a serious matter. If he has almost 5,500 documents, emails, all that stuff, solely dealing with the pseudonyms that he was using and sending messages to Hunter, it's absolutely undeniable that the guy was selling fake secrets.
Yeah.
Like, anybody that's like, oh no, he's not selling secrets. It's like, are you insane? Are you kidding? Like, this guy can claim that the sun is purple and you'd believe him.
Oh yeah.
But the reality is that the guy is as corrupt as the day is long.
Yeah, yeah.
And now he's demented, and so he can't cover his tracks as well as he would like to. And his son is a crack addict.
He's nowhere near as good as he.
Oh no!
My gosh. Quick question, Steven. Did I ever tell you about the SARS, the Biden SARS? Because I remember hearing about it on Gino. So the SARS are it's something called an SAR, Suspicious Activity Report. So apparently a bank, the way a bank works is a bank is supposed to they're required by law, if there's ever any suspicious transactions of any kind, and there's a whole bunch of criteria that you have to meet in order to meet that to meet that, they're required by law to report those to the government. And when they report those, that means that they have to be truthful, or else they're going to get lied. They're going to get sued into oblivion. But also, these banks are usually very reluctant. They will not publish those unless they have no choice, absolutely no choice. Most companies in most places may have a couple suspicious activity reports every so often, but the Bidens have literally, what was it, hundreds of suspicious activity reports. For a little context, some of the most corrupt companies in the world had only maybe a couple dozen. They have hundreds of suspicious activity reports from several banks, which should be a giant red flag, because these cannot be manufactured. They definitely cannot be faked. And if they were not real, then the Bidens would have easily sued these banks, but they haven't. So Dan Bongino was talking about this, and when I heard this, I was like, dang, Like that is incredibly damaging because like these are usually reports that are incredibly that they basically they're not just like fake oh something bad might be happening. It's like no, there's some shady stuff going on. So I recommend people go look at the suspicious
Not a
activity
question.
reports. There is some very shady stuff going on with the Bidens. Like, and it doesn't even take much. There's so much evidence proving that the Bidens are like involved in incredibly corrupt bribery network. But the media, the government, and all the people in power are working overtime to basically try to cover it up. They're trying to cover up Biden's indiscretions and crimes, and they're trying to manufacture a fake, turn Trump into a fake criminal, and turn Biden into a fake saint. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, try to present him and pass him off as the kindly old man, the old grandpa.
Yeah,
the man who only cares about his drug-addled son.
Yeah, the grandpa who has
Nonsense.
a million skeletons in his his basement.
A million skeletons in his basement. But talking about those who have a million skeletons in their basement, let's talk about Trudeau.
That boy.
I know.
Yeah.
So, for possible events, I checked Trudeau's travel advisories for Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. No advisories for LGBT for those countries, just for the United States. See for yourself. So,
let's see, Chrystia Freeland.
Chrystia Freeland has asked why your government issued a travel advisory for LGBTQ plus people to the United States. Freeland speaks of protecting the interests and the safety of every single Canadian and every single group of Canadians.
Oh, by the way, let's play. Hold on. Let's play the Freeland game. See if she does that weird thing that she does. Remember that little.
The weird facial tick.
The weird facial tick that she does whenever she listens to
the question. I'm
wondering
first.
I'm wondering. She's like a dog. Like she turns her head to the side and looks this way.
It's silly.
I wonder if she'll do it.
Issued, the travel advisory for LGBTQ plus people to the United States, and is this something you discussed with President Biden, or your government discussed with President Biden first?
So, as someone who has had the real privilege of serving as Canada's foreign minister, I know that our travel advisories are done very professionally. We have professionals in the government.
Professional liars.
Professional professionals.
Yeah,
around the world, and to monitor whether there are particular dangers to particular groups of Canadians. That's their job, and it's the right thing to do. When it comes to the United States specifically, I have personal experience of dealing with the diversity of U.S. administrations and of dealing with American leaders at all levels of government, in all branches of government, and with Americans who represent diverse groups across the country, whether it is business or labor or civic
lot of diversity there.
And that's because our government understands, as every Canadian government needs to understand, that one of the principal responsibilities of the federal government is to understand how to work with our U.S. neighbor. I think our government has shown that that's a priority for us.
This is so hard to listen to because it's just
like
BS.
I think she comes up with it on the spot.
Well, because you're like, oh yes, it's about the diversity of the United States government and all
it's like
government.
I've met with a lot of diverse people from diverse governments, and the people that are diverse, and diversity is good. And also, did I say diversity enough?
Diversity and inclusion too.
Trying to play diversity bingo,
and then of course, you got to mention equity,
and
racism. Also,
and racism,
white
and
supremacy.
It's like basically like woke bingo. She's got to get her woke bingo. I got 5 across. Woohoo! I got it. Got all. You got to take those names off the list. So, it's as bad as listening to Kamala Harris.
Oh, it is.
Kamala Harris is brutal.
Yeah,
if you
Chrystia Freeland makes a little bit more sense in terms she can formulate an entire sentence without making a crazy cackle.
Yeah,
but Chrystia Freeland it's just buzzword city.
Yeah,
and Chrystia Freeland cycling through, and it's repeating the same phrase but with like slightly different wording and with more buzzwords.
Chrystia Freeland is basically what she does. How she answers a question is she plays woke Mad Gab.
She does.
She already has the words that she's got to throw in there, and the game is like, how can I infuse these words into these answers and make them somehow sensical? So, I mean, she's pretty good at the woke Mad Gab. She just the intersectional Mad Gab is, she's pretty good at it. However, you notice that this happened in the States too, right? There was like, was it what was it? ACLU? I think it was the ACLU or some other. They actually make travel advisories. How this is basically okay. So you know how like the left always they always try to accuse conservatives of the very things that they themselves are doing, right? So they always talk about dog whistling. They always talk about like what is it? Dog whistling and projection and whatever. So what they do is they virtue signal. It's a purity test. They basically show that we are good little cult members by saying the magic words, the buzzwords that demonstrate that they're on the right side of history. That's what they do. That the only reason to make this kind of travel advisory is to virtue signal. That's the only reason. When she says they have professionals that are professional, this is like, no, these are basically professional BS artists. That's what they are.
Professionals that are sorting this issue out.
Yeah. It's just the first thing I thought of when she said that. I was thinking of that episode from Community, where like the conspiracy theories episode. It was like, your name is Professor Professorson. Yes. It's like, yes, Professor. We're Dutch. Like, oh,
we're Dutch.
So but it's this government is only good at one thing, and that is like pushing their ideology in every aspect. They're not good at solving problems. All they're good at is they're really no different really than those Extinction Rebellion protesters, like the climate protesters at the beginning. They don't care about the
better at using buzzwords and lawfare.
Yeah, they basically like they're literally they stand in front of the highway, which is the economy, and they basically plant themselves down and say it's for the earth.
We're going to spend more money.
Yes, like I don't care if you can't get to work. Earth is queen.
Yep.
Yeah. So
climate lockdowns, here we come.
It's just more nonsense, but
it's just more nonsense. But talking about
what's going on in Canada?
Not nonsense. Let's talk about Saskatchewan and Ontario. Actually good things. Saskatchewan says parental consent needed for name pronoun change of students. So the education minister said teachers must start seeking parental consent when children under 16 want to change their names or pronouns. A move that has triggered a review and has been panned as harmful to LGBTQ students, which is nonsense. So Dustin Duncan announced a change on Tuesday, saying the province wanted to standardize pronoun and naming policies as they varied from one school division to the other. He said some parents and teachers also complained. Human rights groups said they are concerned the change could result in outing trans kids to parents who don't accept them. Quote, some supportive families have kicked their kids out of the house or resorted to physical violence. Shredding the rights of students is repulsive. Harina Sivalingham, director of the Equality Program of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, which is a garbage program, said in a statement, implementing policy that could result in increased harm to vulnerable youth is disgraceful. The association also said it would take legal measures against the province. Yes, you know what this is going to do?
What?
It's all this bill is going to do is all they have an obligation to do is just tell the parents. The parents can't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the teacher deems it worthy, the teacher can take it to like Saskatchewan Health and they can start them on hormone treatments. The teacher can encourage them to like use their certain pronouns at home and then use their certain pronouns at school. Can do that. But it's basically the only thing they have to do now is just tell the parents. They don't have to have the parents' consent with anything. But, and then this is all just, like all these advocates are like, oh, it's so terrible that out LGBTQ students. And I'm like, well, it's a good step one.
Yep.
I'm like, we're trying to get to like step 10 here. Preventing them from hiding it from parents is step one. banning it and banning hormone blockers, banning all these things for anybody under 25, that's where we want to get to. And then making it unimaginable because people realize that this is non-biological crap. It is non-substantive, made up in your mind delusional garbage.
Yep.
And encouraging in its children is Munchausen by proxy abuse.
Absolutely.
And there is no way around that. It's like, oh yes, I'm encouraging my child to transition. It's like, okay, how many media outlets have you told? No, like, what do you mean? You have notified media outlets because you want the attention. You want to publicly virtue signal so that you can make a mockery and a showcase of, oh, look at how woke I am. Look at how liberal I am. Look at how virtue signaling I am for the sake of, oh, it's for the sake of my child. No, it's not. It's for the sake of you getting attention and accolades so they can potentially make a TV show about you or like a movie, or you can have a TikTok channel. It's
You're gonna be
all
famous.
about making yourself famous and getting praise from the woke mob.
Yeah.
And you don't care what happens to your kid. You are an abusive, horrible person.
You listen to the people like, that are actually on TV, video, or whatever platform they use, and they talk to their kids as they're transitioning, like, them. You can tell, like, that you listen to the parents, how they talk to their children, and you can immediately tell, like, whoa, these parents are actually, like, they're using manipulative language. And if you were like somebody who was trained to follow that, you would actually be like, whoa, like, what the heck? Like, you'd actually recognize the manipulation that they're using as they talk to them. I've seen several videos like that where parents are using very manipulative, like, language to try to gently, supposedly gently try to like guide their kids to the right conclusions. But you can tell, like, these kids are not coming up with these ideas on their own. They're being groomed by parents who clearly have an end goal in mind, and they're trying to like give themselves plausible deniability by using very like clever like language, even though like the kids are naturally they want to please adults, they want to please their parents, they want to do whatever makes their parents happy, and if that makes their parents happy, they will say whatever their parents want them to say. So that's basically the game that's going on with these people. So Stephen, can you do me a favor? I just sent you a link on Facebook, on Messenger.
Yep.
And I want to see. Yeah, I want to see if you can pull it up really quick. I saw this today on the Pleb Reporter. He's awesome, and I think it's really helpful to understand basically what is going on in schools, and with this whole talk about whether or not to tell parents or not. So if you can pull it up, Stephen, it should come up. So and put it on the screen. I want to walk you through this.
So JJ McCullough, should schools have a policy of informing parents when their child starts using different pronouns or otherwise adopts a new gender identity? 52% said yes. 47.9% said no.
Okay. So here's another question. Okay. If you scroll down and look for a post by somebody called Mr. Fatwa. That post was kind of like, like incredibly.
If you voted, are you a parent? 75% said no. Yep.
Most of the people who are trying to push policies like about children in schools are usually the people who do not have children, not the people. I'd love to see what this poll would look like if 100% of the people who responded were all parents. Because like it's true, like most of these really hardcore ideologues, the way that they work is they basically they don't have children, but they want to basically impose their ideas and their values onto children because they resent parents who they see parents as an obstacle to their true target. Their target is children. And they want to be they want to get at the children because children are easy to manipulate, easy to fool, and easy to groom into whatever thing. This is why this is why there's protections against for children. This is why you're not allowed, no adult is allowed to have sex with an underage minor. Why? Because children are very easy to fool
Manipulate.
and
to
to
fool
manipulate
and to
Yeah.
trick and to brainwash.
Yes, and people who don't, who are like usually childless, who don't have children, and who are ideologues, they see parents as the enemy, and they want to have these kind of policies where they can basically bypass the parents, and they don't tell parents because that makes it easier for them to get at their kids, because their goal is to get the next generation to be on their side. That's their goal, because they believe that their parents are evil, and that they don't want to go through the hard work of having families, or the hard work of convincing the parents. Because one of the hallmarks, sadly, of many people on the lunatic left is that they don't like persuasion. They like coercion.
They like force.
That's the only way. That's the only way that
they like
can
coercion. Of course, they like the other C. They like censorship.
That's right. Censorship or coercion. Those are the two things.
That's why it's like you talk about, or like we don't talk about it so much, but Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles has to censor anything he says that talks about transgenderism. Because he knows that if he mentions it and talks about it in a negative light, then YouTube will ban it. And this is how big tech affects the conversation. This is why you have so many people who are like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong. You don't see anything wrong with it because you haven't been allowed to see any content that goes against it. Because the big tech platforms in which you get your news on, and I'm glad, it's interesting because the liberal Trudeau government passed Bill C-11 to try and discourage people from acquiring their news on social media and online. And what it ended up doing is it ended up turning people away from Facebook, where there'll be fact-checking posts against totally legit things, or they'll be shadow banned for it, and push them towards Twitter. Because I still don't exactly know, but this rule does not apply to Twitter for some reason or another. And Twitter, you can actually post news and have it actually reach a large prospective audience. And so this is a good thing.
Yeah, Tim Pool actually talked about that, right? He said that rather than try to convince all your friends about your position, get them to get on Twitter. Because they're going to be more exposed to
Twitter is where the conversation is happening.
That's where the conversation is happening. So
So we really do like Twitter's now that Elon is taken over. He's made Twitter so much better.
Yeah.
But of course, this didn't just happen in Ontario. I mean, this didn't just happen in Saskatchewan. It happened also in Ontario. So from Billboard Chris on Twitter, massive win. Ontario's education minister now says that parents should be informed when a child wants to use a new name and pronouns at school. This is a 180-degree shift, and it's only happening because of all our efforts in creating awareness. This is good. This is step 1. We need to get to step 10.
That's the way, man. That's the way.
Yeah. We need to get further. We need to get all the way, because right now in Canada, this is where we're at in Canada. It's like in Canada, you could not have a child use a different pronoun without the parents knowing. In many places in the United States, you cannot get hormones, you cannot get surgeries, you cannot get counseling, you cannot be socially transitioned on a child under the age of 18.
You can't experiment on children.
Like step 8, step 9. You can't experiment on children, and you can't forcibly imprison their parents for disagreeing.
Yeah.
So yes, by the way, this is a good first step. We need to go 5-7 steps further.
Yeah. By the way, did you hear about the other good news, Stephen? The dad who was imprisoned for fighting against his daughter's transition.
I haven't heard anything about him.
He basically won an appeal in Canadian court that basically said you're off the hook. You don't have to serve the contempt of court charges that you.
Okay, that's another good first step.
That was a good first step. Yep.
Okay, maybe on Thursday the flag might be briefly upright. For 3 good things in Canada, and then it'll be back upside down for terrible things that happen next week.
Of course. I mean, we still have Trudeau, so...
we have 3 steps forward, and then we have about 80 steps backward.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Trudeau. You're a dick.
But good things are coming, so as far as Canada goes. One thing is Trudeau they're starting to speculate all over the place that Trudeau might actually resign at some point because he is becoming a gigantic liability for the Liberal Party.
Yes.
And he did you hear about this? He had like a fundraiser in like Edmonton, and like barely like less than 40 people showed up. I was like, ouch.
Well, I know he showed up to the Edmonton Pride Parade,
and he got heckled.
But unfortunately, over the weekend, there was another Pride Parade that happened in which there was some crazy crap that happened.
No,
so, exclusive from Post Millennial, dildo ring toss, pin the clit on the vulva, and family-friendly drag show featured at Ottawa's Pride Festival. And, of course, it featured this person, Faye Johnston, I believe is this person's name.
That's the name?
Yeah, it's a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
So, Capital Pride weekend occurred this weekend in Ottawa with a host of Pride-themed activities in the downtown core. Thousands of people partook in the festivities. Commemorate the event, the intersex-exclusive Progress Pride flag was hung outside the office of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Privy Council. So, woke Pride flag outside the Trudeau office. It's also hanging from the university.
Yours?
Yeah.
What does that circle mean in that flag again?
The circle, I believe, is intersex.
Oh, is that
which
intersex?
I'm like, if I was an intersex person, I'm like, don't involve me in you crazies. Because mine is a genetic disorder. Yours is a mental dysfunction.
Well, there's two kinds. And by the way, transgender and being transgender and being gay, totally different things.
Yep.
The fact that they're grouped together in one big like clump is a nonsense. They're not the same thing. But yeah, go on.
Mm-hmm. So, continuing on, amongst the street festival's vendors, promotional displays, and events that lined several blocks were a dildo toss ring hosted by Durex, pin the clit on the vulva, the Planned Parenthood tent, children who were freely wandering the area. So I don't think we could even show this, but this is clearly an image.
Fly in the camera.
You
have a fly in your camera. Oh, it just kind of went by. Yeah, you literally had a fly. There's like a fly like on half of your screen. It was just like sitting there.
That's funny.
Yeah. You had the Mike. You got the Mike Pence treatment.
Yeah, I did.
Almost.
Apparently.
Yeah, pretty clear. Pretty similar.
So children watch. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't
pin the clit on the vulva. Yeah. This stuff will get you censored.
You can see the. Yeah. You can see that.
We'll have the link in the article. You can look it up yourself.
Yeah.
But my goodness, like how in the world does anyone believe that this is actually family friendly? And B,
it's not. It's because we've talked about that.
Of course, I know.
Family friendly is code for queer friendly.
Yes. But I'm just saying that we know this, but how does anyone, even on the modern left, believe that this is family friendly that aren't aware that family friendly is indoctrination?
Yeah. Yeah, like the original creators of Drag Queen Story Hour said, their goal is to put glitter in the carpet that you can never. In other words, their goal is to plant seeds that they hope will eventually result in these kids either A, becoming sexually deviant or sexually active, which is what they want. They believe that children are highly sexual. B, they're hoping that the seeds of confusion will lead kids eventually to adopting one of the transgender identities, and they're basically trying to turn these kids into basically the children in Pinocchio. Remember that whole thing in Pinocchio, Stephen, where it was like that island of for the delinquent boys or whatever. Like they got and it was basically like a trap.
Yeah.
Pulled them into turn them into donkeys and like lifelong servitude. Like children who are trapped by the basically the trap that is the transgender pipeline. They don't realize that they're basically going to be turned into lifelong medical patients, because that doesn't go away. Like you don't go through a process and you're done. You're in it for life. Two, that most of the interventions are irreversible. And three, that once they've used you and gone through and gotten what they wanted from by getting all the they'll discard you. They'll just pretend you don't exist anymore. They're like, oh, you're no longer useful to us. Now it's on to the next batch of kids that we can basically turn into like Frankensteins, like for the future. It's really shady. But the problem isn't so much that this is happening, is that this is happening so blatantly. Like, look at that picture from the first picture from the post-millennial article. The guy is literally walking in public,
just
wearing
like
a giant penis. Like, that should be easily obscenity. Easily. It shouldn't even be questionable that is obscenity, but it's considered good. It's considered like righteous obscenity and wholesome obscenity. Like the fact that they have
apparently now that they deem that a thing.
Yeah. The fact that they actually have dildos out in public, and if you actually look at that clip of that, just like that, before you actually play the video of that dildo toss, you have two families there with kids. Like, that kid is probably no older than like 3 years old. And of course, he's going to look at that and he's like, what's that? And I'm guessing because those parents are like bringing their kids purposely to the pride place, they're going to tell them like, oh, that's a dildo. One day you can play with that. Maybe you can borrow mine. It's like, this is how, like, this is the kind of like depravity that destroys nations. When parents are basically okay showing their kids very deviant and very like out of the norm, like fetishes, like sexual, like beyond like just regular sexual education. This is sexual indoctrination. So it's sad that this is so prominently out in the open. This should be the kind of stuff that happens obviously in secret. Like, for you and I know, you and I know, like, for years when you're growing up, we went to the movie store back when they had like movie stores like Blockbuster or whatever,
and they would have a special section.
And they'll have a special section, and you knew you're not supposed to go back there. You knew what it was,
and
basically.
everybody knew.
Yeah,
like if you went back there, it's like, oh, I know what he's doing. Whereas nowadays, it's like, oh, well, I can just access this stuff online. Oh, I can just now that because all of the online movement towards pornography, the online movement towards perversion, and towards the detriment of our moral compass, then all of us have been and even like you and I have been affected by this too. We are been desensitized to evil, and now we look at things like this, and sometimes when people are like, oh, like it's just this, and you're like, a tiny part of you is like, oh, and then you're like, no, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I cannot even slightly agree that this is some representation of free expression. No, freedom of expression is not exploiting and abusing kids. And this next story is exactly where they want to go. This is the slippery slope. This is where they're going to. And it is absolutely 100% disgusting.
This was like a whole other level.
German daycares promote sexual exploration rooms where children can engage in sexual games. One daycare said it offered kids the freedom to try out childish sexuality in the rooms. Several daycare centers in Germany are reportedly considering or have already implemented sexual exploration rooms where children can engage in sexual games. According to several reports, two nurseries in the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia having discussed plans to promote safe spaces where children can explore masturbation. When asked for comment by the German newspaper Die Welt, the North Rhine-Westphalia Children's Ministry, headed by Green Josephine Paul, said that sexual behavior by children could not be prevented, and so they had no intention of contacting the daycare centers. You should not only be fired, you should be arrested for allowing this stuff in your country. That is absolutely deplorable. Oh yeah, we can't prevent it. We can't prevent these children from being exposed to this grooming and this brainwashing. We have no intention of actually putting any effort in to stop it. That's your job. You lazy, cowardly witch. Do your job.
Try to make that argument with anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Kids bullying each other. Well, we can't prevent it.
Do anything about it.
Might as well encourage bullying. I mean, so if you're gonna bully, so you might as well just let them do it.
This is basically the saying. Like I've actually heard this argument before, because I was like, okay, like why are like I don't want children to go to a drag show because they'll be exposed. Oh, they'll be exposed to that stuff online. I'm like, why? And like talking about the pornography at Pride events. I'm like, I don't want that at Pride events. I don't want that at any event. I don't want children exposed to that. And they're like, it's not wrong to expose children to porn. And I'm like, what?
Children are not sexual.
I'm like, children are not sexual. Why on earth would you think that it's normal? Oh, like, you're crazy if you don't think kids are accessing this. And I'm like, if you're allowing your children, if you think it's totally normal for children to access porn, you're off your hinges. And they're like, well, you're just absolutely, like, totally repressive trying to stop your children. Yes. If you're going to call me totally repressive for trying to stop my children from accessing pornography, then yes, go ahead. Call me whatever names you want. I don't care what names you call me because I care about protecting my kids and putting them first. And your names mean absolutely jack crap to me.
It's the same. It's the same kind of mindset because we hear this all the time. I hear this all the time with when it comes to like the pushback against the idea of abstinence. Okay, people in this world legitimately believe that it's not possible for somebody to actually be abstinent. They literally believe that it's not physically possible for somebody to not have sex. Like, it's like we're basically animals and carnal. We're gonna have sex and all that kind of stuff. They don't understand that this is not the norm in human history. This is an abnormal thing, and it does happen in human societies that throw caution to the wind and just have all sorts of rampant sexuality of any kind, anytime, anywhere, are the societies that completely and totally fall apart. This is not a good thing for society. Now, secondly, the idea that people can actually be like trained to be self-disciplined is not abnormal. That is actually like more normal. A person that is actually this is like the thing, like, what kind of society do you want to create? Do you want to create a society of people who have no self-control? That's not going to be a good society. That's a society of people who basically just have anything that they want. They're hedonists. It's a hedonistic society, and those are not moral people. These are not people who are going to become good citizens. They're people who are going to take advantage, who are going to be self-centered and selfish, and who just want their own thing to be the main thing. It's like, I just want what I want. Who cares about anybody else, right? Now, the big justification that we always heard when it came to second, I'm just trying to see what happened to my camera.
Well, you dropped out of TrueConf.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm just checking. Sorry about that.
Well, I had some weird,
glitch. Yeah, it's weird. I was fine on the conference before. Yeah, I'm still.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll just finish my thought. Okay, so look at the way that they progress. This is a progression down the slippery slope. Okay, so in the 90s, I remember being introduced to the idea. Maybe you can call me back and I'll just kind of reconnect it or something like that. Okay, so in the 90s, we were introduced to the concept. Okay, so here's the talking point. In the 90s, we were told, okay, we're going to start doing sex ed. Okay. The rationale for sex ed was that it's all about preventing two things. You want to prevent STDs or sexually transmitted diseases or infections. And number two, you want to help kids prevent pregnancy. That was the justification for sex ed. Now, on the surface, that sounds reasonable. It sounds like, okay, we want to help kids. Like, we don't want kids to get diseases, and we definitely don't want kids to get pregnant. And so that was the justification. Somewhere along the line, what happened is that kids, now they changed the purpose of sex ed from preventative or prevention to promotion.
Promotion. Yep.
Nowadays, sex ed is promoting sex.
Sexual deviance. Well, not just sex, but sexual deviancy.
They're promoting more and more deviant or out of the norm sexual expression, including they're trying to use use it to promote, obviously, like, gay lifestyle. So they even tell children, you should experiment by having sex with both genders to discover if you're maybe gay.
This is actually something that one of the daycares. So Remix noted that another daycare in Germany, found in the town of Rheinberg, facilitates doctor games where children are urged to peruse other students' bodies.
Yeah.
Like, what on earth?
Sexual assault.
Oh, it is. It's like, oh yeah, you should explore another child's body. It's like, no. Nope. It's like, it's not appropriate for you to explore your body sexually. It's like, yes, there is a difference between understanding what is going on with your body and exploring it, and for the sake of pleasuring.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of course, I've taught my children, it's like, okay, these are the terms for these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is biologically, anatomically correct. This is the function that matters to you right now about, like, peeing and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to teach them about how to use their sexual organs when they're 5.
Mm-hmm.
That would be absolutely crazy. And Master Voltaire is totally correct. Even animals have more sense than these mental cases.
It's true.
Animals have more decency, even though animals are led entirely by instinct.
Yeah.
These people have lost the plot and then continued to dig.
Yeah, and this is why we're there's such a big movement to, like, get kids out of schools into homeschools, because schools are now dangerous.
Yeah,
they're literally they're dangerous places for children.
Even like, so of course I send my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad teaches at a private school, and so we get a family discount. And this is a private Christian school. You have to sign a waiver, you have to sign a declaration of intent, you have to sign a statement of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a student, you had to have both the parents and the student sign and agree with all 13 points of the statement of faith. Nowadays, you don't need to agree with all 13 points. You need to agree with points 6 through 13, which are basically like, you don't need to actually be a Christian. You just need to be, like, basically supportive of what the school is doing.
Yeah, that's really.
And I'm like, wow, like, that's no longer enough.
Yeah,
like, the school should not be kowtowing and saying, okay, we'll accept more so we can have more enrollment, so we can have more tuition. No, it says we need to be making a firm line in the sand, saying this is the line. We are never going to cross it, because we know what the government is going to do. We know what the world is going to do and try and crush us. And we are going to stand defiance even in the face of enormous opposition.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, you budge, because we won't.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we have to remember too is that two things. Number one is that whenever you introduce sexuality to children too early, it has a very, like, negative and lifelong negative impact on children. We're looking at a lot of stories about people, like full adults, who were introduced to pornography way too early, like in their, like, 8, 7, or 6, and they become sexual addicts. They have, like, sexual disorders and problems that they developed, that all started because they were introduced to way too early. That they always say they wish that they had never opened that Pandora's box, because they were too young to understand what they were doing, and suddenly, because the brain is still developing at that age, you're absolutely, like, destroying a child's development by introducing too early, because children are not sexual beings. Why is it that kids, like, are scared of cooties when they're in elementary school? I've worked in elementary schools. It's legit. Girls are like, ew, when they think about boys. When you talk about, like, boys they like, no, they think it's cutie. They think it's gross. Like, ugh. The second the kids hit puberty, that's when they start getting interested in the opposite sex. Because guess what? Puberty is the beginning of sexuality.
Yep.
When you're a child, you don't even know the idea of your parents having sex. It's like, bleh. They can't even, like, fathom, like, the grossness of that, right? So that's number one. The idea that it's too early, these kids are not sexual. But number two, here's very important thing that these German again, they're like the climate activists. They couldn't care less about the impact on others. It's just their way or the highway. Okay. Number two is that when you introduce children to sexual play and you normalize it, you like, hey, touching yourself, touching others, totally normal. You shouldn't feel like bad about this at all. Like this should just be like a totally normal thing. Whenever you do that, guess what that does? It makes that child way more susceptible to abuse by another adult.
Yep.
Because one of the reasons why we're always saying you need to teach kids how to recognize when they're being abused is you have to basically make that an odd thing.
Yes.
Hey.
So, interesting comment. So, hello, Trindade. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that. So, you're from Brazil. Very interesting. Have a lot of questions about that, but let's engage. What's happening? So, we're addressing an article, and I'm quickly going to transition over to that just briefly to showcase what we're talking about in this incident. So, in this incident, German daycare is promoting sexual exploration rooms where children can engage in sexual games. That's what we're talking about in this specific instance. And so we're just, yes, thank you, Disa Kong, for linking the article. Very good for you. So we've been talking, of course, about how the degradation of society, and this is where not a lot of people are willing to admit this, but this is where society is moving. This is the general progression. This is the slippery slope of, we'll start with teaching children about the plethora and the spectrum of genders in elementary school. Then you'll teach them on how to masturbate. And then it's like, oh, well, if we're teaching them that in elementary school, then why don't we teach them that in daycare? Why don't we teach them that in preschool?
Yeah.
It's like they are trying to groom and brainwash and indoctrinate children at younger and younger ages, because the younger they can take these children, the more susceptible they are to brainwashing and coercion, because that's what these people care about.
Yeah.
Taking advantage of innocent kids.
The most important thing that we have to remember is that this isn't just immoral. This is like legitimately dangerous. You are putting children in harm's way. If you normalize this kind of behavior in daycare, do you have any idea how easily it could be exploited by a really nefarious person and used for abuse? Do you have any idea how easy it would be for somebody to make that into an abusive situation?
Yep.
Like, this is dangerous.
Easy.
And those children are going to be like sexually broken individuals, sexually deviant. Like the idea that children are like, I've heard people say this, and I just, it makes me wonder, like, how immoral a person has. They say like, oh, well, teenagers are going to engage in like sex like time, and it's totally going to happen. And I'm like, that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. Children who engage in like runaway sex with as many people as they want are incredibly susceptible to all sorts of abuse. Like the young girls who are easily like manipulated by boys who who are playing them, who are basically used for sex and all that kind of stuff. You're creating an entire generation of sexually broken people. Completely sexually broken people, and children who are incredibly susceptible to abuse and to exploitation and to all sorts of things. This is dangerous. This is the very reason why we created ages of consent. And sadly, there's a big movement right now across the world that we know it's coming, and like we want to let you know, like, this is coming. Their end goal is to eliminate ages of consent. Why? Because underneath it all, there's a massive current of pedophilia. People want the end goal. The end goal is the ability to have sex with children and it not being illegal. That is the end goal for a lot of the activists who pretend to be like, oh, we care about trans kids. Well, no, the end goal is to eliminate age of consent so that it's a free for all. And you know what? Like, the second any country crosses that threshold and eliminates age of consent, it is all over for kids. Because kids are going to be like exploited for like pornography. Kids are going to be like abused by untold numbers of people. and it's always going to be like, oh, it's a consensual.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a free for all, and it's going to be disastrous.
It's going to be awful. Yep.
It's going to be absolutely awful.
All right. Yeah. So that is where we're going to end for today because we've been going for over 2 hours. So those who are joining the live stream, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have little hints or tips about how to incorporate the chat better onto the bottom left-hand corner, please let me know. I thought it went okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, reasonably visible. Mm-hmm. So, Master Voltaire seems to think so as well. No, is that I don't know, a thumbs up.
Famulous?
I thought that was a finger for a second. I was like, what? It was so tiny on my phone. So thank you for giving us a little thumbs up. I'm sorry for interpreting it as a middle finger. But if you want to watch our other content, you can check us out at YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. I will try and get better now that the school year is starting with actually uploading segments instead of just uploading the entire episode and trying to have more specific segments. I believe now that we have no longer any strikes on YouTube, so we can be more loosey-goosey about what we post there.
Well, still want to be
fairly careful, but don't have to be like on the edge and not post anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you want to check us out on our text platforms such as Facebook, Gitter, and Twitter, then you can send us a message, give us a comment, give us a like, all that sort of stuff. You can also check us out on our website at thetruedudes.com, where you can find all sorts of interesting and engaging content about subjects such as masks and vaccines and everything under the sun. If you want us to talk about anything specific, or if you want to join us on our next open mic, send us a message and we will set that up for you.
We'll make it happen.
That being said, here at the Shrewd Dudes Podcast, we always like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd? Have a great night, everybody. We will see you on Thursday for a regularly scheduled live stream. Until then, have a great night, and as always, God bless.
Good night, everybody.